Okay, so let's dive in. In a recent SurveyMonkey study, we found 2/3 or 67% of employees say their companies have adopted a do more with less approach in the last 6 months. How are you personally navigating the do more with less challenge? How do you make those tough calls on what initiatives you are going to pursue and what perhaps goes on the chopping block? What's been the biggest adjustment for you and your team? Ashley, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think it starts with having a solid set of OKRs, not only at the team level, but at the company level, so that every team member can reflect on like, how does this connect to my team objectives and how does this connect to the company objectives? And then if the answer is no to either of those, it's on the chopping block. We have an impact versus effort matrix that we really like. So high effort, medium effort, low effort, high impact, medium impact, low impact, and obviously high impact, low effort gets prioritized. And scoring each of them really gives us a top to bottom, what can we get done that's going to make the biggest impact overall with the least amount of effort. And then for high impact, high effort, it really lets us know, okay, we have to start planning now because it's going to take a long time and a lot of effort, but it'll be worth it in the end. And then the adjustment for the team has really been measure everything. So we need to have an answer for why we are or aren't doing something, and being able to effectively communicate that to your team members in case it's something they really wanted to work on. You have to clearly be like, no, we can't work on it, and here's exactly why. But also to communicate to the rest of the company in like a quantitative and qualitative way. Again, there's fun things that we do that maybe we'll do again, but we have to have a reason on why we're not doing them right now. So measure everything and connect it to OKRs.
That's great. Julie, what do you have to add there?
Yes, great question and super relevant. We made some changes to our business recently and kind of had to go through this process, right? But I think one of the keys here is actually, it's not really doing more with less. It's kind of accepting that you actually have to do less with less in some situations and be okay with that. And to Ashley's point around prioritization, one of the things we did actually at the beginning of this year, we made some changes to the business and had to figure out, okay, what is our product roadmap going to look like with a different looking team? And so one of the things we did as an entire leadership team is we sat down and we built out business cases for every single one of the projects and initiatives that we were working on. And we kind of did it a little bit like Survivor style. We all got in a room together and really talked about, well, this is our challenge and this is what we're working on, the impact that we think it will have. And, over here, well, this is a really big opportunity and I think this could be huge for the business. And here, here's our analysis as to why. And so not only did we end up in a place that we kind of knew what was on the bottom on the chopping block, but we also were really able to do this in a collaborative way. So, by the end, some teams were like, okay, no, forget about mine. Theirs is definitely better, right? And it actually made it, a situation that could and is, challenging in a lot of ways. It kind of unified the team around it. It created empathy among the different roles and functions because they actually saw like, here are some of the challenges that other groups are facing because of this too. And it made for a really, I would say, successful outcome in that scenario that we were all able to walk away feeling really good about, what the roadmap and the path was moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. I love the empathy approach you employed there, Julie. Colleen, how about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think similar to Julie, we have a slightly different perspective on the do more with less. It's a do more with the same, right? Of your resourcing isn't necessarily increasing in your business or whatever your remit may be in our world being customer facing, right? Our customers are also facing the same battle, which means they're automatically asking significantly more of all of their vendors, right? And so for us, how we deliver for our customers and what we ask of our team definitely echoing what Julie and Ashley are saying of having tight OKRs. We've moved from each department having their own goals and their own priorities to every team in the business laddering up to the same company objectives that then roll out to, marketing or customer success or sales, and making sure that we're all in service of the same goals, as opposed to each team kind of marching to the beat of their own drum, so to speak, which was definitely much more common a couple of years ago. So it's definitely helped streamline, but the biggest kind of opportunity that we also have is, continuing to streamline what we're not doing, right, in favor of what we are doing. So the measuring of the ROI that was spoken about, and making sure we have clear OKRs, and ensuring that the teams know that the OKRs aren't necessarily all additive, but it also can mean if we're not focused on it, then the other things that seem really cool and exciting, or things that we can and should do, doesn't mean that something's coming off of our plate for this quarter or this half, or is this something that we prioritize down the road and maybe chip away at if we hit an OKR early? So really trying to think about that. And, of course, like anything, best laid plans, right? It still can get overwhelming and there are still added priorities, but trying to maintain that focus and communicating that to the team, so that way they know to roll up to us if there is a gap or there is something that they're not sure whether it's a priority or not, having those clear objectives and that clear escalation path.
Yeah, that's great. I think one of the hardest parts is deciding what really, really great ideas have to stay in the parking lot for right now, because they're just not the top priority. And we can revisit those ideas when we have the capacity or bandwidth, for sure. The one thing, Julie, and you touched on this a little bit, is the idea, which I really try to stress with my team, the difference between activity and impact, and being pretty rigorous and reflective about the work that we're doing, and what is activity-based work versus what is high impact work, all in the spirit of, realistically, you can't do more with less. It's about doing the most important things with the resources and the capacity that you have. So I think that differentiation between activity and busy work, and then those things that are really, really high impact, can be another way to kind of really unlock that. Okay, let's move on to a not a buzzword, but definitely kind of a buzzword, but definitely a hot topic these days. AI. And we know that professionals in the workplace are using AI to move fast and to be more effective in their roles. Our research found that among those using AI at work, 84% have seen a benefit, including efficiency, improved quality of work, and even help generating new ideas. How are you and your teams using AI to drive efficiencies, whether that's using AI tools or adopting features within your already existing tech stack? How are you getting feedback from your teams around processes that are inefficient or unclear and ripe for use of AI? And feel free to chime in here to the audience in the chat if you'd like. And Ashley, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, well, Fellows in AI Tools, and our CEO has an AI podcast, so we definitely over-index on finding ways that AI can make us more efficient. But we'll start with mapping out our existing workflows, and then at every stage ask ourselves, is there a tool or is there a use case with our existing tools that can help us at every stage of this workflow? Across the company, we record almost all of our internal meetings, customer interviews, product demos, and that's just helped a lot in having access to information, both like inside of our team and outside throughout the company. When it comes to feedback with tools, we're just really open about what's working and not working. Like we have especially with AI, like a fail fast, learn fast culture. And we celebrate all of our learnings as much as we celebrate our wins when it comes to AI. I think with AI specifically, our expectation is that there is going to be a big learning curve, and that AI might not necessarily make your process more efficient right away. In most cases, when we've tried new tools, it's made them less efficient because they're not working the way we do. We know how to do it in an hour. With AI, we're going back and forth with prompts and it'll take an hour and a half. But stressing that we're committed to learning how to leverage these tools and get better at them, get better at prompting, get better at expectations, so that like once we have mastered the use cases or prompts, we'll be way more efficient. So I think like really stressing it might not help you right now, and it's going to be a pain to learn how to leverage it the way you want to leverage it. But it's not going anywhere, and we're like committed to learning how to use it. And having someone, we'll do demos in our team meetings of like, I tried this, it didn't work. Here's a prompt that really helped me out. So a lot of communication and celebrating learnings and failures with these new tools.
Yeah, that's great. That's really important. How about you, Julie?
Yeah, so kind of going back to your first question, doing more with less, it is really important to find different tools that can supplement and help drive those efficiencies. To Ashley's point, I think AI is so helpful across a number of different facets of the business. We've incorporated it through some of our fraud detection platforms, some of our marketing automations and things like that. But at the same time, it does take time to, train the tools and make sure it's doing everything the way that you would want it to do without making mistakes. And so part of actually our prioritization was figuring out which areas should we actually incorporate AI tools and which ones are we kind of, either putting it on the back burner or better off right now with our in-person team. And so one of the areas that we did incorporate, which is, a standard use case, but we incorporated it into our customer service team. And we have, we use Zendesk, but we have AI agents that we've utilized through them and gotten it trained and up to speed. And the reason why is we sat back and looked at the data of all of our ticketing, and about 50% of our tickets could actually be answered through a simple response versus needing kind of that manual support. And so this felt like somewhere where, Becky, to your point, we could make a pretty big impact fairly quickly on kind of the day-to-day manual work that our team is doing. What I would say is really key to this was, again, number one, knowing what area needed the most kind of help here and would make the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time. And then number two, which was incredibly important, was having our team on board for this. So our head of customer service, she was on board from the very beginning, figuring out, is this something that we want to do? If we do, let's look at different tools to be able to manage this. Because again, the success of any kind of AI tool really depends on the knowledge base, behind what is actually training it. And so having that, those individuals and that team on board and really ensuring it was going to be trained as well as possible was very, very important. And then the exciting thing now is that this allows us to use that team to really work on the escalations that need a bigger manual lift, or really work on the more strategic parts of the role that, because we're in, ticketing mode, we weren't able to dedicate the time.
Colleen, do you want to jump in with your perspective?
Similar to what Ashley mentioned, Gong is also an AI company. And so with that, we're lucky that we have the mindset, right? I know there are a lot of businesses out there, and this is something we work with on our with our customers on every day, is the fear of AI, or how can it really help me, right? So the mindset within our teams is very pro AI, right? But with that, it's how do you use it to be better, faster, and smarter with what you're already doing versus viewing any AI-driven workflows as additive, right? And so that's been kind of the big learning curve for our teams. Is it's really easy to get lost in all of the really cool functionality and all the GPTs and all the cool things that you can do and you can research and add on. And instead, it's about helping our teams focus their time and effort, and really laser in on what are the 5 key things that you have to do all day long, and are there things that you can do to get better at that or to be more efficient. So things like making sure that you're showing up really well educated to customer calls. Can you use AI to do that research? Making sure that you're well prepared for presentations and analyzing large data sets. AI can help you with that. So helping our teams understand where they can plug in those specific tools and resources has been extremely helpful. And where I'd say the challenge is twofold, right? Is the space is moving so quick that staying ahead of the space as a leader and helping our teams be as strategic as possible and harness what's available to them as much as possible, you have to be so on top of your game. And it's really hard to stay in front of your team. So the biggest thing that I've learned as a leader with AI is there are going to be champions within your organization, and learn from them and hear what they're doing, have them share. I think Ashley said, in team meetings, having folks share, like, this is what's working for me, this is what's not, here's what it's saving me, here's how it's helping me, has been just an absolute game changer. And not feeling the need for our leaders to be the most informed and to be always dictating the direction we're going with AI, and letting some of the teams and the team members who are very pro AI or have found cool workflows go deep on Reddit threads, right, to the different AI strategies they could be using, let them help lead, has been one of the biggest and best learnings that we've had for continuing to fold that in, while obviously working with our teams on what tools we have at Gong and where we can use those AI features, but also thinking about how do we use the out-of-the-box thinkers on our team to maximize that efficiency. And that's just been an absolute game changer for that team sharing and that overall kind of that strategic thinking bouncing back and forth amongst our teams as well.
Yeah, that's great. I love the leadership on emerging technologies can come from anywhere within the organization. People are working to solve problems, do their work more efficiently, and in their exploration of those activities, they can discover great things that can be beneficial to the rest of us. As a leader by title, it's about really embracing those opportunities for sure. Julie, welcome back.
This is what happens when I go into the office.
That's what it is. It's an in-office day for sure.
Yeah.
Was there anything that we didn't capture in your
No, I think that was it. I think it was perfect timing. So
okay, great. All right. Well, we've gone over how many workers are feeling as it relates to pressure to do more with less and to work smarter and more efficiently. Another challenge for leaders these days is how to keep your team motivated and engaged when they're juggling multiple roles, a lot of responsibility, working to find balance between their personal and professional lives. So a few stats in this category that I found super interesting from our research. 73% of workers have taken on more responsibility at work in the last 6 months. And 49% say their pay has stayed the same while responsibilities have increased. 62% of workers reported feeling more stressed about work in the last 6 months. How are you all checking in with your teams around work-life balance and stress? What are the mindsets and culture shifts that you're driving on your teams? And how can you tell it's working or not? Audience, we'd love to hear from you in the chat on this one as well. Ashley, let's start with you again on this one.
Yeah, I think, Fellow's fully remote, so my one-on-one meetings are really important because I don't have the ability to just see someone in the office and notice like, oh, that person looks stressed. So I have those every week without question. They don't get canceled. I document them as much as possible and when appropriate. Record them just so I have a history and can go back and check on employees. We do frequent bandwidth checking, and it's just become common knowledge in the team, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at on bandwidth? To the point where someone will go like, oh, this week I'm at a 9, and everyone kind of understands this person's at a 9 this week, unless it's like critical, don't bother them. A 7, 8 is kind of the sweet spot that we're all comfortable in, with the understanding that if it's launch week, you're going to be at a 10. But if someone's consistently for a couple weeks saying, I'm at a 9, I'm at a 10, then it's back to that impact versus effort matrix on their priorities and going like, okay, is it a process issue, a workload issue? If it's process, then it goes back to how can we use AI to speed this up for you? If it's a workload process, then it's the matrix to figure out what can we take off your plate that has the lowest impact. In terms of mind shift for the team, I think it's really about like being curious. So like that worked with AI too. How can I streamline this? How can I automate this with AI? But also in terms of like exploring new tools, looking into trends, like Colleen said, things are moving so quickly that you have to be curious or you'll miss it. So being curious about data, competitors, learning about our customers, like digging into customer calls because they're so full of insights, or getting a better understanding of other parts of the business. So it's really important for the team to have the desire to want to dig into things. If someone's like, hey, I'm going to be late to this meeting, I'm digging into something, like, great, take your time. You can listen to it after, but like go dig into things. And that's just uncovered a ton of blind spots across the board. It started great conversations and initiatives that ended up being a bigger priority than the ones that we had listed at the beginning of the week, month, quarter. And I think it just makes work and life more interesting when you're like consistently learning, even though like if you have your month or your quarter planned out with your activities and your initiatives, being able to like learn something and share it with the team has been a really nice culture that we've cultivated, like not only on the marketing team, but at Fellow.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for sharing. I love your continuous use of the frameworks too. I think going back to those kind of principles, which help you make really good decisions, even in this category, is really important. Julie, how about you?
Yeah, so I think this is such a great question. And I mean, I feel it too sometimes. I'm sure you guys do as well. So I think there's two parts to this really. And I see the foundational piece being the company and the structure we provide for our teams and our employees. So, I think about this isn't just like having a wellness stipend, although we have that and that's lovely, but it is really about having a culture of setting clear expectations, right? You think about people getting new roles and getting new responsibilities. So it's setting clear expectations. It's giving and receiving constant feedback around that, right? If someone's taking on something new, there's ambiguity, they're not sure if they're doing well. And so all of those things lead to a more stressful situation. And then, yes, there is, of course, the standards around having PTO and respecting working hours and respecting, if someone has to pick their kids up at daycare or whatever it might be, and making sure that all of those, benefits and perks and components are in place as well. But I think that's, that's secondary to saying, look, I see that you're taking on more. I am going to lean in to ensure that I set you up for success. And that goes back to some really kind of core foundational components. The second piece, I would say, no one's going to be as good of an advocate for yourself as you, right? And so that's where it really comes down to the individual. So the way I think about this is, as I've grown in my career and learned in different roles, I figure out how I actually work at my best, which is, I'm sure, what everyone else is doing, throughout their careers as well. And I think it's really important, and you have to realize you're in control of that. You have the power to raise your hand and say, look, this structure isn't working for me, or, great, I'm happy to take this on, but I need to know then, what are my expectations? What are my goals? What are my KPIs? And how am I going to be tracked to this, right? Because we know this, a lot of times things just get thrown on you. But that is fully, in your right and your power to ask for those things, because that's how you'll show up at your best as well. And then I think the other thing with all of that is, I now know, 2 weeks out from when I'm going to hit burnout, right? It's not like I'm in it anymore and I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. Now I know the signs and the signals at this point. And so that's the moment where I raise my hand to my manager, my peers. I ask for more support. I ask for help. I delegate a little bit more. Again, you use that PTO, you use your wellness stipend, you figure out what works for you in those environments and those situations as well. So again, I think it's, 100% on the company to create the structure and the tools and the support systems in place. And then it's really on every individual to know how they work at their best and advocate for themselves. When you get to before that breaking point,
right.
Let's hope. Yeah.
Right. Before the snapping point, for sure.
Correct.
Colleen, what would you like to add to this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with everything that's been said, and especially love, Julie, you're your own best advocate and you have to know how you work. And that's sort of what, I've really tried to do with my team as well is, you're working with a bunch of individuals, who operate as a team. But one of the biggest things that, I found really helps my team as well is that human to human relationship, right? We're all just people. There are people coming back from maternity leave, getting ready for maternity or paternity leave, who are prepping for PTO, who have a customer escalation or something big that's happening in their book of business, right? So really understanding, to Ashley's point, are they a 9 on their bandwidth level, whether it's personal or professional or a little bit of both? Are they at a 4 or 5 this week, and can we tap them in for additional work or support? So really kind of understanding on the person level, right? Both in the work and personal life of where they're at, and understanding as well what makes them tick and what tends to overwhelm them or excite them, right? And so knowing that while we can't help sometimes taking on tasks or activities that overwhelm them, but being able to understand then where your team is coming from, right? Of if it seems like it's a 3-alarm fire, when in reality, it's maybe for the business a 1-alarm fire, but it's something that really stresses them out. So being a human and relating to them on that and helping them work through those kind of core areas has just been kind of a really massive change for us. And being remote, right? Making sure that we find that time for face-to-face, even virtual, but face-to-face connection versus just communicating on Slack or, in big group threads versus in those smaller, more intimate conversations has just been huge for that kind of personal connection and to understand where the team is at. And then I would say the only other thing that I would add on to this is in terms of just kind of thinking about it from the perspective of the planning ahead more and more as much as possible for that workload, right? Like we know Q1 is always crazy for certain reasons. Q4 is always crazy for very different reasons. And so prioritizing the urgent versus the important in each of those quarters has been really helpful in terms of helping my team think about the balance and feeling like, okay, we're coming off of Q4, everyone's still feeling that big deal stress. But in reality, we should really be thinking about and focusing on planning and executing. And so just kind of helping reshift that mindset and reframe where the team is prioritizing their time and what they're thinking or feeling is urgent, whether it's a leftover from a previous quarter or something that they're hearing versus the reality of what we need them focused on. So that's been kind of the biggest thing that I've seen has helped my team, is really that honing in on that focus of what's the reality of what we're focusing on right now versus what are we planning for and what are we going to need to execute on in 3 weeks time and 3 months time. So that way we remove as many surprises as we can, knowing that we can't help all surprises. So those have been the couple areas. And, of course, measuring the employee engagement, right? Of just because those are the things that I think will work is those, anonymous surveys as well as those regular touch points are so critical for the teams as well, to make sure that what we are putting into place is working. And if it's not working, what do we need to pivot on? What are the things that we can double down on that are really having a big impact as well? So to make sure we have that objective perspective outside of what we think is working.
Yeah, that's great. I couldn't agree more. I was going to be remiss if I didn't say, in addition to the structural and systemic and your operating cadence and your benefits and perks, always remember that you have the opportunity to have a conversation at scale with your employees through the use of a SurveyMonkey survey. That is part of our overarching strategy to really listen and understand what's going on with our employees and to integrate those findings and learnings into our structure, our cadence, the clarity we offer on our goals and objectives. And that can be similar for you too. Okay, I think we have time for a few questions. The first of which is, should our strategic approach be that we ask questions that confirm what we think we know, or questions that challenge us to discover what we don't know? Great question. Julie, let's have you start off on that one if you don't mind.
Oh, deep thoughts. I love it.
Yeah.
I think I would say both, and that's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I definitely think both. And, I would say really depends on the stage of the business, the situation, the function. So, for example, when I think about a business that's a little bit further along, that kind of has a proven business model that is really trying to kind of take that product market fit and expand it, for example, that might be a moment where you say, okay, we've got the beginnings of, some success and some impact here. So what are some of the hypotheses that we have? And then what are the things that we can do and measure to see if we can pull this lever and get a little bit farther there, right? Versus what I would say, maybe companies that are in a different stage. And then really it's more of a blue ocean strategy where you can kind of say, look, what are we even trying to solve for? And it goes back to that quote unquote reinventing the wheel. Maybe we can reinvent the wheel, and there is a moment in time and place to kind of have those conversations and think about that at that stage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also add here that sometimes confirmation bias can kick in. If you're just looking to validate your hypothesis, to your point, you can miss a nugget, an unlock, or a huge opportunity. So while you do want to go down the road of exploring your hypothesis, it's really important to being open to discoveries along the way, or being sent down a different road or path, because that's where you can really find some unlocks or opportunities. Okay, next question. Can you share a time when a strategy didn't work out? And what did you take from that experience? Colleen or Ashley, can I put you on the spot?
I'm happy to chime in on this one. So I think one of the biggest ones that always comes to mind when I think about this question is tied to some of the strategic levers that we had put in place for how we go to market going into 2022 and 2023, which are years that I know many of my SaaS counterparts would not redo if they had to, in terms of the market environment, right? And so with that, we had a strategy that we thought was really going to meet the market where they were at. And quite frankly, it just wasn't what our customers needed. And we saw a pretty stark impact on our customer retention and our customer satisfaction. And we really needed to take that feedback, learn from it, and pivot, which we did. And it worked out great, but it took a lot of time and blood, sweat, and tears to get there. And I think one of the things that was most important for our team to take away from that experience is the hybrid, right? Of what is our product and our process and our approach for what we're delivering to market? What can we deliver on? And then what do our customers say they need? But there are also times where our customers don't necessarily always know what they need. So paying attention really, really heavily to the market as well, and not being afraid to be hyper prescriptive and to really kind of think 10 steps ahead of our customers is something that we've taken away, and we've really folded into how we engage, and we've really focused on being cutting edge. But we had to learn that the hard way, in terms of not just taking customer feedback and doing exactly what they say, but also being a little bit bullish and making sure that we're paying attention to the market and how we can help solve for those unique needs. So with that came a whole bunch of, also things of not being afraid to fall on the sword in front of your teams in terms of a strategy, making sure that we have the entire company bought in and moving kind of in one direction. So there were tons of learnings that came out of that, but I would say primarily was making sure that we're leading the market and that we're paying attention to every signal available to us, not just the ones that have worked for us in the past, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely does. Ashley, any thoughts to add here?
When I saw when a strategy didn't work out, I think most of them don't work out. And I think it's around like falling on your sword in front of your team and making sure that you have learnings and celebrating like, great, this didn't work out, but all of the stuff that we learned through this is really going to help us on next strategy and future. I think becomes really useful. Like you learn a lot more from your strategies that didn't work out than you do from the ones that do.
Yeah, I agree. I think some of the greatest businesses or tools and products that we use out there were a pivot from a failed strategy, a failed initial strategy. So sometimes the learning and the failure helps you move on to find the right product market fit, as you said, Colleen. Well, ladies, I'm afraid that we're out of time. 30 minutes goes by very, very quickly. Ashley, Julie, Colleen, thank you so much for your insights today. It's been a pleasure to meet you and spend time with you.